Secretary of State Hillary Clinton insists that all options are on the table when it comes to dealing with the Gaddafi regime. But he said that the U.S. is a long way still from deciding to intervene militarily in Libya. Been a lot of mixed signals. Senator Joe Lieberman is a member of the Armed Services Committee and chairs the Committee for Homeland Security and is just back from the Middle East. Senator, let's talk about these military options, because what we heard from Defense Secretary Gates today is that it's very complicated, that a no-fly zone would require first striking Libyan air defenses and more planes that than exist on a single carrier. And he told the House there's been too much loose talk about the military options.
Well, I mean, you got to start with what's happening on the ground, which is that unlike Tunisia and Egypt, the peaceful uprisings of the people of these countries have been met by violence from the military, directed to carry out the violence by the leader of the country, Gaddafi. And the question is, will the world stand by and watch that happen? And I don't think we should. Now, it's neither desirable nor necessary, nor do the Libyans want us to actually go in militarily on the ground. But I think we have a responsibility and an interest here with our allies to make clear to Colonel Gaddafi that what he's doing is unacceptable, and we won't stand by and let it happen. And among the things I think we have to consider are an internationally imposed no-fly zone to make it impossible for him, Gaddafi, to do what he's been doing, which is sending his own aircraft up and having them attack his own people from the air. Is it complicated? Yeah. Can we do it? Of course the U.S. and international NATO militaries can do it. We did it for a long time and quite successfully in Iraq. This would be for a much shorter time, I hope and pray.
And in fact, there seems to be some sense that was suggested by Secretary Clinton today that we don't want to make the mistakes that President Clinton acknowledged that were made back during the Balkan War, where we didn't respond soon enough. Senator Kerry earlier on this program today told me that you have to take some actions. You can't just let Gaddafi defy the world once you tell him that he has to go and that he's been condemned.
Andrea, I totally agree, and I'm really grateful that Secretary Clinton said that. We had great battles during the 90s about beginning with asking our colleagues in Congress to pass a resolution authorizing President Clinton to provide arms to the Bosnians so they could protect themselves against genocide. Ultimately, we intervened, and this is a very similar circumstance with an added dimension, in my opinion. When we're in the Middle East and in the Arab world last week, particularly in Egypt, a number of the young people who led the revolution there, the peaceful revolution, said to us that they're really watching what happens in Libya and what the rest of the world does. Does the world stand back and let a cruel leader slaughter these peaceful protesters, or does the world essentially say to Gaddafi, you can't get away with this? And I think to the people, the young people who have brought about this remarkable transformation and a new era possible in the Arab world, it's very important for us to reassure them that we're not going to turn our back to the slaughter of the Libyans by their government, which is no longer a credible government.
It's one thing to sound off about it, but NATO is showing no appetite for it, and the UN would have to agree, and Russia would probably not go along with that. So is this just a lot of sound, perhaps, to try to get some Libyan pilots to defect, but not really something that's going to happen?
Well, you know, the whole idea of the no-fly zone really came not from me or Senator McCain or Senator Kerry. It came first from the Libyan delegation at the United Nations. And I thought when I heard it that it was a good idea. I'm frustrated right now that the international institutions that really should be leading this effort, such as the United Nations and NATO, seem now to be holding back. But I'm encouraged that Secretary Clinton and others around the White House have said there are very active considerations. All options are on the table. In the end, there's a lot of global interest in making sure that the peaceful democratic revolutions that have now occurred in the Arab world successfully end. And if Gaddafi is left standing after having brutalized his own people, it's a very bad sign to the others in other countries that are trying to change their lives consistent with our values. So I think the U.S. has to lead in this effort and convince others, particularly in NATO, to join us.
And before I let you go, Senator, a quick response on Pan Am 103, the fact that now we at least have defecting Libyan diplomats saying that Muammar Gaddafi was directly involved. The Secretary of State has called for an investigation, but what do you say to these families who've been saying for years that two White Houses have gone along with Gaddafi without making him really own up to what he did?
Well, I'm saying all you can say to the families is that they were right. And of course, a lot of us have long suspected, in fact, believed that they were right. I mean, Gaddafi negotiated an agreement, including compensation for the families of those who were lost in Pan Am 103, but he never accepted responsibility for himself. And then to let Megrahi, who was the one person in jail for this, to go on the theory that he was dying, and that happened well over a year ago, and he's still alive in Libya, is an outrage. So hopefully we learn from the lessons of history. This man overall has been brutal, and it's time for him to go. And if those who are courageous enough to fight him within Libya need some help and ask for it, I think it's not only our moral responsibility, but in our political diplomatic interest to help the Libyan people create a new day for themselves.
Senator Joe Lieberman, thank you very much. And
Thanks,
what
Andrea.
political story will be making headlines in the next 24 hours? MSNBC contributor Jonathan Capehart is the editorial writer.